Welcome. My name is Grandma Storm. I write stories for young adults. Today I am reading chapters 96 through 100 in my book, The Book of Faith. Nicholas turned from the telescope and focused his attention on a panel of instruments. "Let me show you the clock," signed the giant. Theophilus pulled up a stool and studied a curious collection of wires and knobs. It did not look like a clock. There was no face, nor were there hands. A large gold globe the size of a giant's head, etched with numbers and symbols, spun in the embrace of fine black wires that skimmed freely over the orb. Control lines and cables were as confused as twigs in a bird's nest. Power surged through the wiring. Jeweled movements glowed with an inner fire. "One needs to be careful," noted the giant. "In the wrong hands, a device of this sort could make a royal mess. Time is a created thing, subject to disorder and decay, and it is subject to control." "What do you mean?" "Can man control the wild beast?" "With proper restraints," replied Theophilus. "Can man control the wind and water?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Well, it depends on scale. A dipper of water can satisfy a man's thirst. A breeze can be caught by a boat's sail, or dry the wash hanging on a line. However, a storm or the ocean tide, no man can control. Too big, too strong." "Correct on all counts," answered Nicholas. "What about time?" "Time cannot be put in a bottle." "Do not be so sure." "Does water flow?" "Yes." "Does air move?" "Yes." "Does not time flow and move as well?" "You cannot capture time in your hand." "But you did observe small quantities of water and air can be controlled." "Yes, but time exists as a whole. It cannot be divided." Nicholas smiled. "Time is a lot looser than you might think." "What time is it here?" "Half past the hour." "Correct. What time is it on a star?" "I don't know." "Is a year of time on this planet the same as a year of time on another planet?" "A year would be a full revolution about its sun." "Different than our year, then?" "Yes," smiled the giant. "Just as physics proves that steel is more elastic than rubber, time is more fluid than water. Now, what if I could capture a fraction of time? With this clock," gestured the giant, "such a function is possible. We use it for calibration purposes. We don't capture it for long, just enough to compare it with our observations of the heavens. The king approved this research, but that does not make it any less dangerous." Theophilus nodded, still perplexed. "In here," Nicholas pointed at the gold orb, "we arrest a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second. We call this fraction an axion. If it were improperly managed, I am not sure what would happen. We have a grasp on the theory, but reality might be different. Hypothesis is only supposition after all." The giant looked through the telescope again and adjusted a knob on the clock before continuing. "Time is different inside the globe. Just as on the face of another star, time is not the same in the globe as it is here." He indicated the air around him. My observations confirm that time is waning. Nicholas dialed a control and pulled a series of knobs. The jewels flickered and faded. The orb came to a stop. Something moved in the air. Theophilus felt a catch in his throat. The moment passed. Literally, the moment passed. Theophilus put his hand to his head. It throbbed a bit. He hoped his old troubles were not coming back. That is when he got a slap on the back that knocked the wind out of him. The giant laughed. Come on. I think it is time for dinner. 97. Sleep eluded him, so he thought he might as well work. Once inside the horology laboratory, he went to the regulator, balanced the gold orb on his fulcrum, and flipped the switch. The mechanism surged to life, and then it died. He spat. The first scholar wondered what would happen if he pushed this lever. He wondered what would happen if he pulled that wire. Endless calculations yielded nothing. Blind experimentation was stupid, but he was exhausted. If he did not make meaningful progress with the regulator, there would be hell to pay. He was rapidly coming to a state of mind where he would be happy to pay hell and be done with it. He heard the door to the lab open. He turned to look, but couldn't see who it was. There was too much junk in the way. No one should be coming through that door. There was only one key, and it was in his pocket. He always locked it, entering and leaving. Quick, hide, said a voice in his head. That was ridiculous. How foolish. He was fully authorized to be there. He had no reason to hide. Now, commanded the voice. He obeyed. He slipped behind a table piled high with coils of wire, welding gear, tubing, and trash. Convincing his old knees to bend, he crouched. It was a minor miracle he didn't groan on the way down. Then he remembered he had not disconnected the regulator. The gold orb still spun. Power surged through its jewels. Variations of "how stupid" flowed through his brain. He could not see the intruder, but he was getting closer. He glanced about, looking for a weapon. Don't look, blasted voice in his head again. He looked. Lurching along was the dear queen. No brown leathers, no Dr. Luce. No one was pushing, yet the wheelchair moved. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled. The chair wove through the room, dodging stools and tables, drawing closer to the regulator. She was close enough that he could smell her. Her hands clutched the arms of the wheelchair. Her eyes were open, but vacant. She seemed catatonic. She was at the regulator. She was clawing instrumentation. Good heavens, what was she doing? He struggled to his feet. She must be stopped. My dear queen, allow me to assist you. The instrument is delicate. The regulator is not stable. You might be harmed. He reached over to stop her hand. Her eyes shifted. She unhinged her jaw and shot fire at the old man, burning straight through his brain. The first scholar crumpled to his knees. He stayed there, charred, smoldering, and newly dead. Hell was hotter than he thought it would be. Her hands went back to the instruments. Her fingers commanded the knobs. She adjusted the complications without looking at them. Jewels glowed. The gold orb spun. 98. At night, they did not search for wood to build shelter and start a fire for warmth. Instead, she would invite them into her rest. One by one, she would sweep them off their feet and roll branch and leaf around them. Kerr would curl up by her roots, his girl directly overhead. The mothering tree would sway, rocking them all to sleep. There was no need to set a watch. She had slept all winter. Spring was her awakening. On cool spring nights, they were warm. On rainy nights, they were dry. She sang as they slept. She sang of life and limb and root. Faith had never rested so well or slept so deeply. At dawn, she let them down with their packs. They rummaged a quick breakfast and then skipped onto the trail. How different was this journey for Faith. With Pa, it had been cold, wet, and exhausting. This time there were warm breezes and flower crowns, songs and dances. At last they climbed a rise and stood over a vast alpine valley. The light of the dying day revealed bleached bones of ancient slain. Faith trembled, remembering standing there with Pa. Her mother took her hand. "Do not be frightened, my darling," murmured her mother. "It is time for these dry bones to live. Take out the seed and sow it." As Faith reached to obey, she swept her off her feet. Branch by branch, Faith was passed along until she swayed with the wind at the very top of the tree. Reaching in the bag, Faith filled her hand with seed. With a laugh, she flung it into the air. The breeze caught it, and the birds shot from her branches, catching the seed in their beaks and flying to the valley. They dropped it on Bones and flew back for more. As soon as Faith threw one handful, the bag was heavy with seed again. "Like my rock," thought the little girl. "The bread and the seed and—" A new thought occurred to her. Pa would read this to me from his book. "But they that wait upon the King shall renew strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles." I might not have eagles here, but these little birds are all that is needed. Then it was done. The bag was empty. She handed Faith down branch by branch into her mother's waiting arms. The mothering tree sighed in twig and trunk. She released their packs, and they fell to the ground. Her roots swirled and settled. She rustled her leaves and grew still. Her birds flew to her, found their favorite spots to roost for the night, and sang their evening songs. Then all went silent. She did not gather mother, child, and friends into her branches that night. Instead, they rolled in the blankets from their packs. It was a warm night. They only needed the shelter of her canopy. There was no rain, but they missed her embrace. 99. Sisters, dark energy and dark matter, were giddy. Was not their darkness, above all and in all, was not their union most powerful? Was not their fellowship complete with the Prince of the power of the air? A trinity, yes, a perfect trinity. Were they not dazzling, exquisite, magnificent? Were they not immensely clever? Was not all secured by legal writ and binding contract? Would not time be transformed forever? Yes, yes, yes. To all these questions, yes. The dear Queen's little adjustment to the regulator was a final calibration. Her hand turned the dial. Her flesh did the deed. It was necessary, but they could not do it. So they used her body, her long, bony, jewel-encrusted fingers, tightened a rod and attached a cotter pin. The regulator was prepared. To be technical, it was not time, it was the end of time that so worried the sisters. The prince made that painfully clear. They winced at shared memories. Time must continue forever. If time ended, so would they. Long ages passed. The sisters discovered the spectrum. The spectrum was so tiny, a fraction of a fraction, but there it was. The key was gravity. Like a pencil sketch of an object's outline, gravity revealed the spectrum by what was missing. Darkness found wee specks of intelligence within the spectrum that understood them so perfectly. Giddiness, perfect giddiness. These souls of flesh could do what they could not. Solve problems, manipulate matter, make things. The spectrum learned their desire to pet their pride with gore and souls, all made legal, of course, all under contract. No objections possible. It was their due. The spectrum paid. The sisters gave. At least they found a common currency. War, kidnapping, violence, strife, abortion, slavery, murder, torture, regicide, all evil, all hate. The only thing loved was death. The spectrum lusted for lies and treachery. Darkness obliged. It was for mutual benefit. All would profit. Time would continue. Who could possibly stand in their way? The combined abilities solved all difficulties. Did not they comprise the entire universe? Darkness was the majority. Spectrum was the balance. Together they were everything. There was no more. Certainly, in the bounds of time, there was no more. The mechanics were complete. The regulator was prepared. The final technicality lay in the acquisition of an immense amount of energy. That would be difficult. The Dark Sisters chafed a bit. Dr. Luce said they had to supply it. Something about a partnership clause. At any rate, he said he could not supply that much power on his own. Visiting him in the black night, they all agreed they would deliver what was required at the precise moment and in the proper place. Darkness shifted. Matter crunched. Power flickered. The prince of the power of the air sniffed. There were rumors. King, something about a king outside of time. Whoever that was. 100. At the giants' dinner that night, Stephen stood and signed. I received the command. Tonight we descend the mountain. It is time to take up the sword. The final battle is about to begin. Cup banging ensued. Foot stomping commenced. Startled, Theophilus stared at his friends. Giants slapped each other on the back, pushed away their chairs, and cheered. They were using their voices. Theophilus had heard them sing the liturgy of Vespers. He had heard them shout in battle practice. But this was unprecedented. They were cheering and talking all at once. Finally, Philip shouted. The day at last, Nicholas cried. So long, but now we will fight, Nicanor yelled. At last, Timon bellowed as he bounded about the great hall. Theophilus wondered if he could talk. He tried it. Hurrah! The giants stopped and looked at him. They looked at each other and began to laugh. Their laughter sounded like rolls of thunder in Theophilus's ears. Yes, little brother, laughed Stephen. Hurrah indeed. Parmenas started a slow clap. Stephen picked up the beat. Timon and Nicholas moved to the empty floor of the great hall and started to dance with a clap and a stomp and a shout. Parmenas joined them. The pace quickened. One by one, they all joined in the dance, stomping and shouting and clapping. Theophilus joined the circle. They danced until they were gasping for air. 6 giants and Theophilus found their chairs and fell into them, laughing. Nicanor busied himself with clearing away dishes. In a moment he was back, bearing a silver tray laden with mugs and swinging a huge, dusty bottle by the neck. Ho, ho, what have we here? Stephen queried. For health, courage, and strength, we drink tonight to honor our king and the fulfillment of our vows, rumbled Nicanor's deep voice. Yes, Nicanor, agreed Stephen. It is right and proper to drink a toast to our king. Then we will descend the mountain. The night will be long, but the day will be longer. Let us drink. Mugs were filled to the brim. A small one, by giant standards, but large for a man, was given to Theophilus. Prochorus stood and addressed them all. My brothers, our lives have been lived with our eye on that day. We are on the eve of fulfillment. You have been faithful servants of our King. By his grace, you have done well. Let us drink to honor him. Our mission is fulfilled. All rose and shouted, To the king! They drained the mugs to the last drop and then smashed them on the stone floor. Theophilus did the same. He had prepared his mind for a searing liquid to ravage his throat, or perhaps a heady wine that would rush to his brain. Instead, his senses were greeted with clear, cold water that satisfied a thirst he did not know he had. The water composed his mind and focused his senses. It rushed to every cell in his body. He felt newly made, recreated. He felt reborn. Could this be the living water he had read about in the book? Stephen began singing. The others joined him. The chorus of giants sang in voices as deep thunder. The power in the words was like lightning in the air. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O most mighty, O most mighty. Thy right hand shall teach thee terrible things, terrible things, terrible things. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O most mighty, O most mighty. For tomorrow we fight, tomorrow we fight. Ho, ho, we fight. Thank you for listening. To hear more of the story, please come back soon, or you may purchase your own copy on Amazon. Just follow the link below. Until next time.